we have our supporting special education students during virtual learning webinar today, and we're happy to have you all here. And we are very, very grateful to you for taking time out of your very busy days to join us today. So thank you very much. I know that it's been a struggle to keep up, but now it's Friday. And hopefully you can all take a little break this weekend from your vigorous learning and interacting with your kids. So I'm Karen Mazzo, and we have so many people to welcome today, and hoping that we will also get some contributions from all of you. So I'm going to introduce you to our contributors today. They are also on video for a little bit, and then they'll probably take their videos off so you can see the screens. But we will have Kim Salvo from Plymouth. She is the director of special ed there. I'm super happy to have her with us to help us talk through maybe some of the policy questions you might have and to learn how she's communicating with her special education teams. And I want to welcome Jill Hancock from Rumney, where I have worked very happily. There's terrific teachers there in Rumney, and Jill is one of them. And Danae Morrison I'm so happy to have Danae because she has sort of a niche. She's a life skills teacher at Plymouth High School. Janice Watson is a teacher from Maine that in the middle school in Kittery, Maine. It's called Shapley Middle School, and she will share with us today what she's been doing with her students. And Melissa Adams is also from Kittery, Maine, K through 3, as I am also from Kittery, Maine. And Laura is a speech and language contractor that I have worked with for many years, and she will talk to you about how she's delivering services to her kiddos. So we're very happy to have them. And in addition to thanking them and to thanking you for being here, I also want to say thanks to the New Hampshire Department of Ed. We have had thousands of people on our webinars. It's been so incredible to interact with so many committed teachers over the last 2 weeks. We've had so many people on our webinars that we've had to cap them at 1,000. And the New Hampshire Department of Ed has generously allowed us to provide these webinars to you, and we're super grateful to them. Again, thank you to all of you for all your hard work these last couple weeks. And the number 4, just to give you a little explanation of the control panel. So all of the attendees are muted. And we keep it that way because, as I said, I mean, right now there's 720 people listening. So it would just be too many kitchens to be a part of if we unmuted everybody. So you're all on mute. And what we do is you can write in your questions. There's a place on your control panel where it says questions. And if you do the little drop down, there's a place that you can write in. And we will answer them as best we can during the webinar. And Mordecai is another demonstrated success person, team member.
I'm here.
Hi. And she will be monitoring all your questions from the background. And sometimes she will interrupt, and we will be able to answer some of your questions during the webinar. I suspect that there will be many more questions than we can answer. So what we have arranged to do is we download all of the questions that were written in, and then after the webinar, we go through and we answer every single one of them to the best of our ability. And then we upload that Q&A into a shared public file where you can find the PowerPoint, the questions and answers, a certificate of attendance, and also I have uploaded all of the handouts that are referred to in this webinar, as well as several relevant articles from the New Hampshire Department of Ed and the United States Department of Ed that are very relevant to special education teachers and administrators. So you can find all of those at that public site on Google, and you will get the link to that site about 2 hours after the webinar. So you can look for that. The other thing that you will get about 2 hours after the webinar is in the same email is a link to our YouTube channel where a recording of this webinar will exist forever so that you can re-listen to it, you can share it, you can do whatever you need to. Okay, so that's a little background. I'm sure we will repeat that because people generally, if they got on late, might not have heard. So you can look forward to that. At the end, oftentimes we will, if we have time, we will unmute a few people and see if they have any questions, if they raised their hands. There's a way to raise your hand. There's a little hand icon and you can raise your hand. And at the end, if we have time, we will unmute a handful of people to ask some questions. I do want to point you to the New Hampshire Learns Remotely site from the Department of Education in New Hampshire. Go there, check it out. There's a lot of important information there, including a calendar of professional development that's being offered by the state via our organization and other organizations. So, Anne, did you want to add anything? You're good. Okay. I organized the webinar today. So these 6 incredible people are going to share in these different categories, right? Around how they're communicating with their students, how they're communicating with their support teams, and then they're going to share about providing for any specific needs of students that they are working with right now. I suspect we will have some good questions in closing discussion, and I suspect you guys will have a lot of questions. So we look forward to hearing them. The first thing we'll talk about is communication with our students and the frequency and the methods and some of the tools that everybody is using. And Laura, I thought that this was really just beautiful. So I, figured I'd let you speak to that first to set us off in the right mood.
Okay. This has been a tremendous learning curve, I think, for all of us.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
All of the presenters, can you guys turn your camcorders off now?
Sure.
Just so everybody can see the slides more easily. Bye. Thank you. Okay, go for it, Laura. This beautiful.
Absolutely. Oh, well, that's so sweet. For me, and I can speak to myself, this was a huge learning curve where I am a speech and language pathologist. I had never been on a Google Classroom. I've done some online work with kiddos in the past, but not a lot. And I am wonderfully blessed to work with an amazing group of teachers and specialists and administrators who embraced that learning curve for all of us and gave us room to learn and to grow. And so for me, starting up this, I really feel that we have to acknowledge that there is a huge learning curve. And with any learning, there is going to be a tremendous amount of starts and stops and bumps and fails and epic fails and all of those things. But every day we ask our kids to learn and grow. And this is a wonderful, I think, opportunity for us to also do the same. And I think that we need to be patient with ourselves. And as we extend others grace, we extend it to ourselves as well.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you so much. Okay, so Janice.
Hi. So this is I just added here a screenshot of my Google Calendar. So this is kind of what I open every day in the morning. I have office hours that I set. You can see those in purple, and those are kind of an open Google Meet. So if for my students, it's actually linked to their Google Classroom. They can click on the event and join a Google Meet, pop in, pop out at any time during those hours. And then in blue, I have weekly individual check-ins with each of the students on my caseload. Like Laura mentioned, it has definitely been a learning curve. I am a 8th grade case manager, so they're kind of older kids, but let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my students, this coding is OHI, other health impairment, and they mostly struggle with executive functioning, which can be really tricky working from home. So those check-ins that I do with them are helping them organize their time, figure out how to navigate the Google Classroom, and look at what assignments they're going to work on throughout the week. And then those office hours that I have are kind of times for them to pop in to get help with specific assignments. The other thing that I do is, if you can see on Wednesday, right in the middle of the day, I do Jeopardy. I have a daily Jeopardy calendar, and it was something that I did with my students when we were at school. So I was trying to keep it consistent, and it's been really, really fun way to just interact with them without worrying about the academics. And that's been super fun. So like figuring out ways to interact with my students that are trying to keep it as consistent and let them kind of interact with me as much as possible. I try my best to be as accessible throughout the day as I can.
That's great, Janice. Thank you. Are the other, just a quick question.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Janes is clearly someone that you work with. Is that
she's my paraprofessional. So we have she works primarily with 8th grade students, and during our distance learning, each of the paras in our building was kind of assigned a case manager. So her and I work with most of the same students, and she also kind of created these office hours for kids to pop into. So yeah, we work very closely together to help support our students.
And for you,
accommodations and doing it from afar has been tricky, but we're getting used to it.
Oh, that's great. And you're in the building that you're in, paraprofessionals interact virtually with students without the presence of another teacher?
Yes. Okay. Yep.
Okay, so that's something that's being handled differently in different districts. I think there are some districts that have policies where paraprofessionals are to be with another classroom teacher or special education teacher. So that's something that you'll have to check with your district about, folks at home.
Yeah, we did have, before this, we had, our policies where we kind of have relaxed some of those things with this distance learning. And you could see the events in green are when we have our office hours together. So both of us are there. And there are also several other times where we'll meet with students together, have a meet with her and I, and maybe even a classroom teacher and a student, or more than one student.
Thanks, Janice.
Can I just interrupt for 1 sec?
Yes.
We're getting a lot of questions. I can't see that kind of thing, but also a lot of questions that people are waiting for answers from the team. And I just want everyone to know that the team will look at the questions, and if we don't, and answer them. But if we don't get to them all, they will be answered after. So please keep sending in your questions. We will answer them.
And sorry to interrupt again, I just happened to look at the questions and I noticed it says, how do you set this up on Google Calendar? That took me a minute. When you go to add an event in your Google Calendar, there's like a add Hangouts option. And we've been using Google Meet in my district. I know that from what I've seen reading online and stuff, a lot of people are using Zoom. We were trying to keep it consistent because the students at our school already use Google Classroom. Google Meet was new, but they're really slowly getting used to it. I definitely had some students who were really shy at first, didn't want to look at the camera, didn't want to turn the camera on. But once they've kind of gotten used to meeting with us virtually, I think they've started to really access that help a lot more.
Okay. Thanks, Janice. Hi, Melissa.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Great.
So one of the things I'm trying to do as I think about how I'm contacting and connecting with families is very much keeping track of who I've heard from day to day, who I've reached out to, and maybe need to up the ante contact-wise, either making phone calls or things like that. So I created a spreadsheet, and I'm just logging every day. These are the kids I've seen and I've heard from. These are the kids I haven't interacted with yet. And I highlight in yellow at the start of every week, everybody I need to make contact with. The thing that can get tricky about trying to keep up with it, and the reason why I made a spreadsheet, is because my contact with families and students, especially at the elementary level, is as varied as the individual IEPs are, honestly. So I have some families who prefer doing all of our communication over Google Classroom. I'm doing virtual lessons through Google Meets every day as a primary form of communication for several of my students. Some prefer email, some prefer phone call. So this just helps me really track and keep up with who I've seen and how I'm contacting them, so I know the best way to get back in touch with them. I also note if I have had trouble contacting somebody, I'm reaching out to the classroom teachers, to our school counselors, those kind of things, keeping it in this form so that we're not bombarding families with 8 people trying to track them down. We're really trying to streamline our communication, because we're hearing feedback from families. They're getting 24 emails in a day if they have 3 kids in the house, and several different people reaching out. So this is just a way for me to track and streamline communication.
And so, Melissa, this document is shared on Google Docs, and so everyone, all of the people that are working with these students are viewing this document where?
So this is my personal Google spreadsheet. We have a school-wide Google spreadsheet that lists every single student in our school. And when we have a point of contact with their student, we're coding it in there. But this helps me keep track of what type of contact I had. This is a little more detailed than what we're doing on the school-wide spreadsheet.
But you are sharing your contacts school-wide so that to lessen repetition and.
Yeah, so we're trying to eliminate, if there's a family we haven't heard from, we don't want the classroom teacher, the para, the special ed teacher, every interventionist, the school counselor, all trying to make contact, because then it gets really overwhelming. So this is a way for us to designate a point person, and it's really a discussion child to child who the school point person will be.
Terrific, thank you. Hi, Danae.
How are you?
I'm great.
Good. So this is, it's ever changing. I've already even updated it and changed it at this point, but again, I'm trying to do the same thing with lessening the emails. I have students with significant special needs, and they have therapy, and which is so vital to what we do. So what we do is I'm kind of the coordinator, and we put everything together, and then I share it out. So I incorporate OT and speech and everything within what I do, and I chart it all, and then I send it both to the families and to the kids. And then all of their work, I had sent home some paperwork. I'm now not doing any more paperwork, but everything is connected to either a link that I add on there or the Google Classroom, which luckily I had already been using with the students. So it really wasn't too bad. And I talk to my families at least weekly. I Zoom with my students. I see them about 3 times a week. Because I do the therapy sessions with them. I'm online with them. And it works fantastic. I'm really appreciative of the team effort of everybody that joins in, including the paras. Everybody's just jumped in to work together to make sure our kids are well taken care of.
Thanks, Danae. I wanted to put out a question to the group real quick. Do you communicate with and plan lessons with your classroom teachers daily or weekly? Does anyone want to respond to that?
This
Hi,
is
this
Melissa
is
here. I can jump in.
Sure.
I am trying my best to follow what's written in the actual IEP. So my students have daily academic intervention sessions, and I am providing daily virtual lessons with my students through Google Meets and also using Google Classroom. And then for my students who have maybe a frequency of 1 times 30 a week or, you know, 2 sessions at 30 minutes a week, I'm scheduling that way. So I'm trying to follow that service grid on the IEP.
That's great. And are you in contact with the classroom teachers in that process?
It's been great. We've been coordinating with the classroom teachers about what work is coming through them and what work is coming through special education, and also doing joint sessions. So I've jumped into some of the classroom teacher Google Meets, and they've jumped into some of my special education sessions as well.
Okay. And I see in the responses in the questions that some people are doing weekly with their classroom teachers, some are doing daily. So thank you for that input, folks.
And hi, this is Janice. In my setting, most of my students are mainstream for the majority of their classes. So I communicate with the classroom teachers multiple times a day, and I actually co-teach 2 classes. So for those classes, we have a shared assignments in Google Classroom. We do Google Meets together. So I find myself, we have a group chat, text chat. So I'm communicating with my team of classroom teachers multiple times a day. It's a little bit easier for me because I'm a single grade level, only 4 teachers to communicate with. So that makes it pretty easy to keep the communication open.
You're lucky to have that co-teaching. That must be also kind of fun virtually, more fun than being alone. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll get some questions around that, and that you might be happy to answer them after. Danae, did you want to talk a little bit about this slide?
So what I did was try to make it as easy as possible to help my students. You know, I work with high school, and I like my students to be able to be as independent as possible. And a lot of our parents are still working and, you know, trying to do as much as they can do. So this is linked so that the kids can really get on and do everything pretty independently. And then even if you go on my Google Classroom, I think there's another slide for that. I have it dated with the number so that they can go right along with it. And really, it only took them a couple of days to figure it out, and they're doing a really good job with it. And I'm getting 100% participation. So I'm really excited about that.
So this exact document with links is posted on Google Classroom.
So this
Correct?
exact document with links is emailed to both families and students. And then when you go on Google Classroom, the assignments are there, because I didn't want Google Classroom to be totally overwhelming either. So that's why you see on this, it specifically says what's on Google Classroom, and they're all on it in every single link, and it's all in order, 2 per day,
Okay.
so that they can access it.
Understood. So you email this, and that directs them when to go to Google Classroom, when to go to Khan Academy, and so forth.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And here's your Google Classroom.
Correct.
And so you always post an email at least the night before if families want to look it over. Great.
Yeah, but I'm actually now going to start. I'm going to start doing it the weekend. I've been working to get it done so I can get the week done, because I'm finding that when talking with parents, like I do have some parents that work in the hospital, God bless them, and they are, you know, they're like, well, I work on, you know, this day and this day, it changes every week. So they did want that request of having the work all together so that they can kind of make their own schedule. So I'm going to now post all my stuff for next week on Friday and do that same grid, and then have it just organized in Google Classroom so that they can all work at their own pace.
That makes sense. Thanks. Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about your communication with students and parents?
Absolutely. I am trying as well to be absolutely consistent with their IEPs. And so I have, when possible, so I'm working with an experiential learning program when we were in a classroom building. And in the brick and mortar building, I should say, and co-taught with the teacher there. And we have kept that consistent. So it's the same day and same time, and we meet with that same group, which has really been wonderful. So I keep the length and the frequency consistent with the IEP. There are some times where that is a little bit difficult or a lot difficult. I have reached out to parents when this first started, and I think I was lucky because I was on, I got a lot of responses because everybody's kids were still in school and I could still make those phone calls. Set up a regular schedule and then email the kiddos with a link when it's their time. If they don't respond, I email their parents. And then I document everything, which is, I think, what we're going to all have to do, and it's going to be a really important part of this. So I talk with the kiddos a couple times a week. I use Google Hangouts at the school, see them individually and in groups, and try to, when I have, in the past, when I've seen kiddos in their classroom, I try to join them in one of their classrooms if possible.
Great, thanks. I just have a question that I think is important. I'd love to hear from the 6 of you, and then also if the folks out there want to write in. Do you have a separate Google Classroom for special education, or are you sending links from the classroom teacher's Google Classroom? So I'm sure that the answer to that varies. Is anybody working with the classroom teacher through a single Google Classroom? Does anyone have?
I can speak to that.
Janice, is that you?
Yes, it's me.
Okay, go for it.
So we have we set up actually, most of our teachers already had Google Classrooms before we left school, but we set up a distance learning Google Classroom for the whole 8th grade. So they only had to click into one Google Classroom for this whole kind of remote learning adventure. And then within Google Classroom, each of the teachers is using you can assign assignments and select a specific topic. So there's a topic for each subject area. And the other cool thing that I found with Google Classroom in terms of special education, because I also just noticed in the questions, people asking about confidentiality with Google Classroom, is when you make assignments, you can select which students to assign it to. So for example, I have 4 students that I do pull out reading with, and I can make assignments and assign it to just to them. So none of the other students or parents are seeing that those reading assignments are assigned to those 4 students. The same goes with my co-taught classes. We have several different levels of math, and we are assigning specific assignments to just specific groups of students, so that other students are only seeing what is assigned to them and not seeing what is assigned to other students. And we put out a survey to the 8th graders, and they all found it really easy to navigate our Google Classroom, having it all in this.
Oops, went out, Janice. I'm assuming she was about to say all in the same place. And I also concur that does sound like a very good way to be able to do that if you can. Did anybody else have I think some of you have self-contained classrooms.
I was going to share about,
Go for it.
I was going to share about K to 4 for younger students. So I work in a mostly pull-out setting, K to 4 in my learning center, but I also do some push-in in the building. So right now, during the remote learning, what I'm doing is I am using K to 4 Google Classrooms collaboratively with each of those K to 4 teachers. And I, in addition, have a Google site. They can find resources for students and parents on my site if they need additional work and outlets. And then the assignments are by grade level that we're both using together.
So this is Jill, right?
Yes.
Jill, so what you're saying is your Google site is accessible to the classroom teachers as a resource. But you're not
and
sharing
to
that.
all of my parents and students.
Okay.
But I use the grade level classroom sites to support for work daily.
Thanks. Okay. Whoops. Thanks. Hey, Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about how you're using, I mean, some of this you talked about already.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this again goes to my learning curve. I spent a lot of time looking at a couple of these different sites. For me, now I have a private practice and I'm in school. So for my private practice, I use Zoom. I find it's really easy to use. I find that there are fewer glitches. There's not usually a delay between the child's mouth moving or my mouth moving on the screen and the sound coming out. For me, it's a more logical layout. I'm using Google Meets in the school. I think that kids are familiar with the whole Google platform because of Google Classrooms. It's super easy to invite kiddos. I know a lot of the kids are more comfortable with the Hangouts. My understanding, and all of this is just my understanding, is that it is less secure, which is a concern for me based on confidentiality. I did have a kiddo wanting to use FaceTime the other day. We were having an issue with some technical issues with the Google Meet, and she asked her mom if she could call me. I had said that she could, and we did some FaceTiming. And Skype is certainly something that I think a lot of people are familiar with. I do not record sessions, and I don't use any of the note-taking capabilities of these because I want to preserve my kiddos' confidentiality as much as I possibly can, knowing this is absolutely uncharted territory.
Thanks. We're actually next week, we are going to do a webinar on safely using Google Meeting tools. So that's going to be on Tuesday next week. The Department of Ed has asked us to do that just to make sure that we are protecting the privacy, that, you know, in the state that we're protecting the privacy of students and parents. So you might want to tune into that.
Right.
And so this is just a little bit of what you're doing on those platforms.
Absolutely. So I'm in I'm using the chat function often in Google Meet. So I was talking about a classroom that I go into when we're living a typical life and work with a group of 5 different kiddos in a self-contained classroom. And we have been learning Latin and Greek root words, and it's a very interactive thing that's very easy to do in a classroom. And then we move to online learning. And I didn't want to take it out. But we are able to do that via Google Meet, and the kids are really very, very receptive. I use the chat function and tell them I'm going to post something, and I hit enter, and I say go, and they start working, and it's that buzz that you see in a classroom that you love. So that's worked really well. I have kiddos using it to construct sentences and working on some written language, because once they send it to me, I compare it to a rubrics that we both are working with. I think it helps them to increase their editing skills. And they know once they hit it, if they hit send and they've forgotten to capitalize, they're not going to get that point or whatever. And to me, for whatever reason, it seems very, very motivating. I did do, this kind of falls somewhere between epic fail and hugely successful. A group with our ELP groups where they had a recipe and they had to double it, and then they had to tell me what to do, and it was fascinating because it was chocolate chip cookies, and we had to double a recipe of half a pound of butter, and I said, okay, half a pound is 2 sticks, how much to double it? And it was tough, and it was really tough for them, which was surprising. I think we have to remember that because this is so new, the weakest link is going to be a parent. And maybe they could have easily told me that doubling a half gives us a whole. In this venue, it was tough. But it allowed me to hold up 2 sticks of butter and say, okay, I need to double this. How many do I really need? It was super fun. My own personal children benefited greatly because I doubled a recipe of chocolate chip cookies, which they loved, but it was very, very interactive. So that was a fun way to do it. I use my Google Classroom, I use it as a general check-in with kids and with families. I have it very, very broad. Again, I'm concerned with confidentiality, so I might put on, I put a little riddle the other day. I have put pictures and asked kids to create some captions that they thought might be appropriate, or ask what different characters and pictures might be thinking. Everybody can access it.
I feel like I put in a little slide for that, but it's gone now. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you know what you put, yeah. No, you might not. I don't know that I gave you one of those, but it is, we have on one of the schools that I am in, they have a general page for everything going on at the school, every teacher's email, website, office hours. And I just put a link to my Google Classroom on that, so that in my mind, confidentiality is preserved because everybody can access it. There's no names, and it's something that absolutely everybody can benefit from. I'm concerned about confidentiality. I sound like a broken record. I have an online thing on my website that people can sign saying, we're going to use this platform. I'm going to do my best, but knowing that we're all going to have to work hard and to take a little bit of risk. And this is what I've written up. It's just my words. It's not been cleared by legal, anything like that, but it puts it out there in my mind that this is what we're doing. I'm going to do my best. But these are different situations, and we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it.
Thanks, Laura. I've uploaded this to the public site, so you can look at it for the language. And again, you know, Laura, this is, like Laura said, this has not been passed by any lawyers or anything like that, but this is just the language that she's using. And Laura, I'm assuming is your record keeping for how you are keeping track of your communications, right?
It is exactly that, yes.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna keep going. You see the little key in the corner. I like the way you made the abbreviations. It keeps things simple. There's your dates at the top. It's a very simple, nice format, so thanks.
Sure.
Okay, and I want to let everybody know that it is becoming clear to me that this webinar is going to go over, and I will adjust the hours certificate that I've uploaded, so don't worry about that. And if you can stay on, that's fabulous, and if you can't stay on, then you can access the recording. So, hi, Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about communication with your teams and service providers?
Yeah, sure. You know, as a special ed director, I feel like it's my job to read all of the stuff that's coming from our attorneys and from the DOE and from the Fed and from the commissioner and the governor. And I'm trying to do that reading and communicate that back to my teams so that they can focus on instruction and not have to, you know, weed through all the details. So I've tried to just choose 3 methods that I'm consistently using. I've been very thoughtful on how to communicate with my people, and to use these 3 methods consistently, you know, hopefully through the whole, you know, remote learning. And these would be, I've got a shared Google Drive, which we use a lot in our district, shared drives. And I've got one for remote learning, and that's where, you know, we're going to access any information or documents. I do a weekly video conference, and I also have a document that's entitled Remote Learning Plan for Special Education Guidance. And I can briefly go over how each of those pieces work. You'll just advance the slide.
Sorry.
Sure. So the shared remote learning Google Drive, just very simple. I just have 2 folders in it. One that has resources, forms, and documents from me. And I keep those limited so people don't have to wade through a bunch of things. And some things in there, kind of like Laura has, something that we have, put up on our website and that we can send to parents for permissions for things, like if we're doing groups and we're concerned that in a video conference group, students will see other students or parents will see students. We've got a permission in there for that. And then I have another folder, and that's just for my support teams to share with each other. They asked early on, can we have a common area to drop resources? So instead of emailing all these resources to each other, these things can just be dropped in that folder. I also do a weekly video conference. It's open to anyone on the support team. The more the merrier, and it's come as you will. Prior to the meeting, I share an agenda through Google so people can see what we're going to talk about and decide if that's something they want to join in on or not, or if they have a session scheduled that time. I also update the agenda with my notes later, so if they miss it, they can sign on again and take a look at that. And then we do a roundtable sharing protocol that I've started just to get people to talk to each other and share a little bit about what they're doing. Of course, I'm always available individually for video conferences, phone calls, emails, and I'm doing a lot of that as well. But at least these common ways to touch base are a little less exhausting for everybody. And
I love it. They're predictable.
Predictable, yeah, exactly. And then so like I said, I'm reading and condensing any guidance. And so what I do is I just date each version every time I update it. I change the date. So if you look at it and it's, oh, that was yesterday, there might be some new stuff there. I've been highlighting as I add new things. And it's in a very easy question and answer format. So in a lot of the questions that I've been getting, trying to give answers to and updating the answers as we get them, because I think some of the answers I gave 2 weeks ago versus the answers I might give today, have definitely changed. Things like, how will special ed students work on assignments? Where can I get more information from the DOE? Where can I find the governor's emergency orders? How should we communicate with parents? What data should I collect? And then real technical things like, how do we handle a 3-year evaluation? How do we handle an annual IEP? So as I get more and more clarification from the DOE, and Becky Fredette's been really great on meeting with the directors twice a week and giving us guidance as she has it. I've been updating that and understanding that Becky is figuring out as she's going along too. So she doesn't always have the answer. So we're kind of waiting and doing our best.
But I like the updates to the documents, the highlights, so that you're answering those questions that everyone can access at once, and it prevents a lot of overlapping communication. So I think that's fabulous.
Exactly. And a lot of back and forth, and you can always go back to it and check again and say, what was that? What did I need to know about that? So it's pretty easy.
Hey, Janice, so I think this is what you wanted to talk about with regard to communicating with your teams.
Yes, so this is just a screenshot. Like I mentioned earlier, I am lucky to have a small team of teachers and one paraprofessional that is kind of dedicated to working with me and the students on my caseload. I have 9 students on my caseload, and as I mentioned before, the majority of them are coded with other health impairment, meaning mostly executive functioning things. I have a couple who have some reading needs, specific learning disabilities, and a couple that are speech language. But one of the things that the para, Mrs. Janes, is doing during this time is she's in charge of making this document and keeping track of what students have completed and not completed throughout the week, so that when I do my weekly check.
I think Janice is having some internet issues. I love that her paraprofessional has been delegated to keep track of this, and I'm sure that she's probably feeling satisfied too to have some distinct roles. So I'm happy to hear that. Melissa?
Sure. Hi, guys. So I have shared this is just a screenshot of a remote learning project folder we have on the Google Drive that's shared between all the special education teachers and all the paras in our building. These are slides that we're using with kids in Google Classroom and with our virtual lessons. And so I've done screencast videos of how to set up all the slides so the paras know exactly what to do, and it walks them through how to sort of help with that prep piece. I also have paras coming to my virtual lessons, which is incredibly helpful because I'm doing a lot of screen sharing in my meetings. And when you share your screen, you cannot necessarily easily see the student or your cameras anymore. So having a para there to help keep the student on task, to help with, I'm still doing a lot of gestural prompting and those type of things. So the paras are really supporting the student that way through our virtual platforms. And then we have weekly virtual team meetings. We have them 3 times a week. We have them school-wide, we have them with our case managers, and then the case managers are meeting with the paras as a whole group, just as a time for us to check in and see if there's anything that's needed. But really, I think for me, and I hope for the people I work with, having this shared drive where it's one spot everybody can communicate through. There's a document in the drive, so people are sort of signing up for this is what I'm doing, this is what's happening, and it's just a centralized way for us to keep track of what the next steps are.
And so these videos that are on the slide, those are teaching your paras how to create the PowerPoints that you need to do the teaching, correct?
Yes, those are screencast videos where they can hear my voice and see exactly what I'm doing as I walk through setting up each of those presentations so that
Got
they
it.
have, sorry, my phone, of course, is going off right now. So they have the ability to look at that if maybe I'm in a class or I'm meeting with somebody, or of course, we always can do virtual meetings and I can walk them through things that way too.
But does that allow them to then replicate the lesson independent of you?
Yeah, so with those videos, these are all materials that we're using within the classroom. So
Right.
they're setting up all those materials on their own. They'll go into the shared document and sign up for this is the portion I'm working on. And then they get updated in real time and I slide those right into my virtual classrooms.
That autonomy must be so appreciated by them.
Well, and it's great for me to feel like there's, if they're looking for something to do, there's a central place they can go and find activities and things that can be done. And then they can see it in action when they join the classroom and see how it's actually being used. So I think having that full circle has been really interesting for some of them.
Thanks. Danae?
Hi, how are you? So I am so grateful for my paras. They are my lifeline. It definitely takes a village. They have been phenomenal at helping me prep activities. Nobody knows our students like they do. They also assist me with activities. I actually have a couple online right now. Hey! And you're going to see, I didn't realize one of them there's a picture of her that happens to be online in the next screen. But so they help me with Zooms. I do daily videos for the kids. They love to see us. So there's daily instructional videos and my paras have helped out with that. I'm very blessed to have one of my awesome paras is fluent in sign language. So we started doing sign this year as a lesson because one of our students uses sign. And we've continued on with that for a Zoom session. And that's an awesome movie that 2 of my wonderful paras made, signing to the Baby Shark song. So that was one of our daily videos, which was a lot of fun. So we're really making sure to incorporate everybody because the kids love everybody. The first movie that I did was I randomly, and this is how I got that idea, we had one day where we could, go into school, grab our stuff, it was kind of madness, but good. And I took a video of all of us and saying hi to the kids, and parents reported back like, my child was so sad about missing school. She's watched the video 6 times, just to see your faces. So that's when I came up with the idea of doing the daily videos. And so the paras have jumped in and helped out and in their strength areas. I have another para that is a retired family and consumer science teacher, and she just did a video for us on, hard-boiled eggs in time for Easter. So they're going to love that. And then the kids, so it gets them much more engaged to want to log in and do their work because they never know what we're going to post. And, again, it's not just me, it's our team, and that's how we worked in school. And I believe that's how we should work online. And they also are tremendous in helping me with activities and prepping. So really, what we present with the kids is really not just, I'm just the organizer and I prep obviously the academic piece, but the paras are helping me with all the other pieces as well as the therapists. And we've all come together, and the kids are feeling really good about it.
Thanks, Danae. We had a webinar yesterday that was focused on paraprofessionals and leveraging them and helping them to advocate also for themselves to support kids right now. And I do just want to say that for some of you, I'm definitely getting comments that you don't feel as useful as you would like to be. And I think teachers are very overwhelmed right now and maybe don't know how to delegate. So I hope that for some of you, you can get some ideas and maybe go back to your classroom teachers and suggest how you might be able to support them. If not right away getting into teaching kids directly, even just asking them how you can help them make materials might be a good start. I do want to stop for 1 second. I've gotten several people who have written in and talked about large caseloads of 25, 26. I'm wondering if anybody presenting on the webinar has any advice for how to manage those high numbers. Or maybe if you could just think about that while we're talking, and at the end we can address that in a little bit. So if you guys could think about that for a little while other people are talking, that would be great. Thanks. Jill, do you want to share about this?
Sure. So I work in the same SAU with Kim DeSalvo. So she has provided us with some really useful templates and tools that we use on a weekly basis. And this one's just to make sure that your services are correlating with whatever the IEP states. So we're putting in the basic student information, parent information, the status of the IEP, and maybe some notes in that. Kim had mentioned earlier about 3-year evaluations and what to do about those. I had one of those beginning as the remote learning started. So you could use that 3rd column to put notes about that. And then the 4th column, service delivery plan, how you're delivering to the student, whether it's via video platform, Zoom, Google Hangouts, or whether you're primarily emailing, having a para contacts them daily, and then just in the last column, putting the date and specific action.
And I have uploaded this into that public file, so you guys can access that instead of recreating the wheel. You might want to take off the SAU at the top.
Yes. Yeah.
And Jill, I actually shared this yesterday on the para webinar. So if you want to just talk for a second or two about.
Sure. So I do a more specific log for myself. I started using one that's more like this, and actually the physical therapist at my school uses this as well, just so that you're able to note on a daily basis what you're giving each student on your caseload. And then, like I said, if related service people are also using the same kind of template, it can be shared via a Google Drive or just within email.
Great. Whoops. Okay, Kim, you had really beautiful things to say around communication. So.
Well, you know what I realize is that, you know, we're capable of doing really difficult things, and certainly this is difficult, but you know, I really want my staff to know how much I appreciate them, and you know, really all the teachers to know how much I appreciate them, and just want to remind people too, and this is the messaging I'm trying to give out, is just stay in the moment and don't sweat the details. We're going to have some technical errors at the end of this, and you know, we'll figure out how to take care of that. You know, but the best thing that you can do right now for your students and for, you know, IEPs, are all worried about the technicalities of IEPs, is stay in touch with your students and families and focus on delivering services. I think great communication with families is going to be the key here when we come out of this. I think it's also important that when we do talk to families, to offer calm support during this unexpected experience. There's a lot of anxiety associated with the uncertainty and the health risks. And, you know, remember that families and kids are watching the news. So be calm and reassuring during your interactions. I think we can really, you know, help support our families in that way too, not just on what we've written as goals and objectives and IEPs.
Thanks, Kim. I think it's super important.
So again, don't get caught up in worrying about the details of compensatory services. It's, you know, as special ed directors, that's something that we worry about. And of course, we're really worried about that. And we're, you know, talking about it and trying to figure out what that's going to look like. But, you know, the message to teachers is, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And we're trying to think in terms of reasonable effort to deliver, you know, what is outlined in IEPs. And I think if we keep that in mind, we're doing a good job. And just as always, keep great documentation. I mean, Jill just showed some great documentation she's keeping. Document your services, document, you know, the communication that you have, and you'll have that for later.
Whoops, there's one more.
Yeah, and the other one is, but there are those outliers in those situations. And don't handle those things alone. So if you're having difficulty with a family, or you're not making, you know, you're not getting in touch with a student, or you're worried about something, you know, that you're seeing or hearing, reach out to your administration with any of those concerns, because I think as a team, you know, we can offer more solutions and support. So we can do a real wraparound if we need to. There are a lot of agencies that, you know, on your own, you may not be able to kind of wrap around, but reaching out to your administration, they may have more support and resources to try to bring in to help. So don't handle it on your own.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about providing for specific needs. This is a small cross-section of special education teachers and administrators that have volunteered. So I'm not sure that I've been able to collect people that represent every single academic, physical, and behavioral need, but hopefully what these wonderful teachers have to offer might help you a little bit, and then you can write in your questions and demonstrate success, and I am happy to try to find people to help you answer those questions. So we can just sort of start out. Jill, you had shared this writing prompt calendar with me.
Sure. So this writing prompt is something that I found and am using with a third grade teacher, and I find that one of my own children is getting this as well at their school, and I liked this way of communicating, but also meeting writing goals. So they might be short prompts, a few sentences, some of them might be a longer, you know, 2-paragraph response, but you're communicating daily through writing and language and getting some sort of response from a student. And that can be shared through the Google Classroom, an attached doc. That I would say is the easiest way.
Thanks, Jill. Danae?
My big thing is that you know, all of our students are so different, and that's why we love what we do. So it's communicating with all of them a little bit differently, and doing what they need. I have one that you know, his mom is out the door pretty early, so I get him up and get him going every morning. And then I have some that are pretty independent, and I just check in through email and talk to them on Zoom a few times a week. So, you know, all families are different. But, you know, I found that I've called families more, and if they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. But I'll say 95% of the time they need to talk, and they do have questions, but they almost feel worried about asking certain questions, which I want them to be comfortable. And they're like, oh, I'm just so lost with what I'm like, okay. And we always come up with a solution. And I remember I remember a training I went to, and she said, you know, use your other people. So I've reached out to, you know, what other services we have in the high school to access help, and they've all been phenomenal. So, you know, if some of the students are, you know, not feeling well, or, you know, they're down or whatever, you know, I pull somebody else in instead of like, oh, they'll be fine, you know, because we have all these wonderful resources, so to access them and have the kids feel as supported as possible. So really important. But it's really important to keep on the students and let them know that we are here for them. But just as much as the students is also the families. And I do feel so, you know, badly for those people with the very large caseloads. That is just tremendous. So, you know, thinking of you, I have a pretty good sized caseload, but not in the 20s. So, you know, it's hard because we always feel so responsible and try to do as much as we can. And I know everybody has their own families to manage as well.
And Danae, with regard to your students or students that have life skills goals, correct?
Yeah, so my students participate, you know, this is high school again, they're included in the regular classrooms, and I have, you know, all of my students do something different. Some of them are accessing their other classes. Some of them I have them accessing like one or two of their classes so they don't get overwhelmed, and then they'll add one. But I teach their, some of their academic courses as reading, writing, math, but it's all functional. And then I do life skills courses, and I do a lot of social skills sort of things. So my lessons embed all of that as well. And I continue with the life skills piece as well as providing them reading, writing, and math instruction at their level.
And when you're doing social skills, are they all on together? How are you? Yeah,
no. So both. So I do some, and we've had to do a tremendous amount of work. And again, you know, my speech staff work with me too, as well as my paras, and we go on. But doing it all together is very challenging. But we do OT all together, and that's worked out well. And we did that at school. But I do small group. So, and right now I'm keeping the groups the same, but then I'll mix them up. But I set them up accordingly. And I put them in groups that I knew that they would be comfortable with asking different questions. And then sometimes if I can tell one of my students needs a little more, I'll call them or Zoom them afterwards individually, and we'll work things out. But definitely find some of my students with autism are having a more difficult time being flexible, but they're, you know, hanging in there and trying. But that's why that face-to-face is so important.
And just to push a little more about the content of your social skills group, I'm trying to share with some other, you know, the people that are on about how you might conduct a social skills group online like that.
So I base all of my work, and I do it directly with my speech staff. But I've social thinking with Marcia Garcia Winner. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. So that's what I was using at school. So what I'll do is post a lesson. I might do a video to introduce it. So I might do something, and I've used, you know, I have kids at my own house, and they've been superstars. And I'll do a role play. And then I'll give a lesson in my direct, because I actually prep, like you guys saw it. I prep and give them work every day. And then when we go on the Zoom call in the small groups, then I'll talk to them, and then we'll do some either role play or talk about it together that way. So I make sure to address it in multiple ways.
Thanks,
Like
Danae.
the one that
Yep.
you saw was on social distancing. I wanted to make sure they understood what that was. You know, that I thought that was really important. So that was a social lesson that we had done. It was really good.
And all of your students are, your students that are autistic, they're verbal, they have verbal capacity, the ones that you're working with?
So we definitely have a mix of students that are not verbal as well, and then we have a lot of students. Most of my students are also verbal, but I have 1 to 2 students that are nonverbal, and I don't have just students with autism. I have a variety of students with different special needs. So, but no, I incorporate it, and then I can specialize different things. So the ones that are nonverbal, I have we also have choice boards, and the other means that we have them communicating. And then another young lady that's nonverbal uses sign. And we actually had a difficult time getting the screen on her, so she was signing over her head. I mean, we've gotten real creative.
Okay. And Danae, I'm sure, would you be okay if anybody wants to contact you around how you're meeting those specific needs after the webinar?
Please, because we're all figuring this out together, and I appreciate everybody else's input, and none of us know everything, and I've learned so much from my team, and love stuff for anybody to reach out, and we can help each other out. So I'd really appreciate that. So thank you. And I apologize, I have a Zoom meeting with some of my students, and so I'm going to have to head out. So please feel free to email me or contact me with anything. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Okay.
You too. Take care.
So Melissa, you want to talk a little about this?
I am very excited about this. So I work in a K-3 setting, and my primary role is I work in the emotional behavioral disturbance classroom. We call it the Achieve program. And so while I do service some students for academics, also a lot of my job revolves around social emotional learning, coping skills, doing risk assessments, those type of things. So this is actually one of those things that was created by one of my ed techs, one of my paras, where I sort of threw out, I have this wacky idea, go ahead and make a run at it. And this is a tic-tac-toe game. So it has embedded links and activities. So the kids access it through the Google Classroom, and they can go in, watch videos, complete activities related to the zones of regulation, which is a curriculum that we use in my classroom. And they've seen frequently and are really familiar with it. And then it has these X's and O's. So once you do an activity, you drop either your X or your O in. And it's something that can take place over several days. But for the young kids, it's a really great way to engage them and to keep them active, and also give them some choice, because a lot of my students can engage in power struggles. And so if you give a here is your expectation, their initial response can be, try again. So this way, there's lots of options for them to make directed choices. Some of the other things we're doing, I have a student who has kindergarten and very high behavior needs. And so we're doing a lot of coaching with the mom around exactly what his program looked like in our setting, the language that we're using, doing a lot of phone support with her to try and set his program up at home, and also being really mindful that his expectations at school were shifted. And so they should be shifted as well at home. And then keeping in my mind, I may put out all of these resources to a family and saying, it's okay if they don't complete everything. It's okay if they sort of pick and choose, or if they come to a day and say, you know what, we've had it today, we need to step away. So modifying my own expectations of adhering to a really strict schedule and adhering to a really strict curriculum and saying, okay, how can I keep this engaging and fun and interesting, and offer it as a resource and not a mandate.
Thanks, Melissa. We're getting so much nice feedback around this. I'm hoping that you might be able to share it, and we can upload it to the shared site.
I also do these for academics. So I have one for math, I have one for reading, and you can rotate out options. And so I just love this concept of a digital choice board as a way for kids to have choice, and to make it a little more fun.
I think it's fabulous. Are you game to share it? To share them? Thanks. I want to let you all know that I also uploaded to the shared site a document that was put out, PBI helping parents with PBIS at home. That is in the shared file, and I think it will be very helpful, so you can all go there after. Okay, thanks, Melissa. That's really cool. Oh, this is Laura's slide from before. This is a slide that's telling about the activity that Laura was describing before. And if you just want to talk real quick, Laura, about it, it's adorable.
Sure. Well, when we were talking about what can we put on a Google Classroom that is accessible to everybody and get kids talking. Remember, I'm a speech and language pathologist. I'm always wanting to work on kids with all kinds of things related to language, including some perspective taking. So I did take this picture at my house the other day and posted it to my website and said, okay, here's a picture. What are these guys thinking? What would they say if they could talk and know that they're good friends? So I thought that was kind of a really fun thing. It was open to anybody. Anybody could respond. We got some great responses. This is a therapy dog in training, so they know him. Some of these kids have met this dog, so that's really fun. I also did a brain teaser for kids and for teachers. The teachers really got all over it, which was really fun. But again, a way of getting kids engaged and getting kids talking, of having the online platform for parents and for kids be a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit less overwhelming, and bring in some of that lightheartedness was my goal here.
And the visuals are very accessible to
Yes.
to all students. I was just talking to someone about that. Hey, Janice.
Hi, is my audio working better now?
It is working better.
Okay, good. I just want to quickly add, because I wanted to, give a plug for my para. One of the things that she does that I wasn't able to say earlier was she's constantly checking on my students' Google Docs in Google Classroom and adding the comments, because we're trying our best to kind of keep her role as similar as it was to when we were in school, which is kind of direct in-person support within the academic setting. So I just wanted to add that about how the para is used. For this slide, this is a screenshot of me and my co-teacher working on, we filmed ourselves having a book talk about Lord of the Flies. So this is one of the ways that I provide for my students with reading disabilities and other needs is I do a weekly video of myself summarizing the chapter that we read. If you could tell by our t-shirts, we're reading Lord of the Flies. So it's a tricky text for some kids. So this is something that goes out to all students, not just the ones on my caseload, but because of that, I'm really working this year. One of my professional goals is to kind of improve co-teaching within the 8th grade and make these resources available to all students, but have them focused towards the needs of the students on my caseload. I find it helps reduce some of the stigma. I have regular ed students access my help, my resources all the time. And so that's been really awesome. This was definitely a feat. We tried to film this thing 5 or 6 times before we finally got it right. But we're talking about the chapter, and we're doing analysis and going over the assignment together, and we posted this on our Google Classroom. And I also co-teach a math class, and in that class, we're doing similar to almost what Melissa had of a choice board. We had 5 options for the week in math, and they include some very kind of simple, straightforward things like working on Khan Academy assignments, but also some more fun, creative things like making a cooking video, making a scale drawing, because I really wanted to find a way to allow some off-screen activities for them. So they have to pick 3 out of the 5 and upload them at the end of the week. So it's been really it was already a challenge this year to kind of tackle this co-teaching thing, and switching to online has been even more of a challenge, but thankfully I have a really good team to work with, and they're regular ed teachers that are so helpful and open to my input and figuring out ways to make it more accessible, because my kids with reading needs, this is the biggest takeaway from this whole experience is the vast amount of extra reading they're doing with Google Classroom, having to access all other directions in writing. So I'm really trying to do as many videos as I can, to even just videos explaining the directions so that they do not have to read directions in addition to reading the class materials, because it just adds so much more stress for them. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do to meet their reading needs.
Thanks, Janice. It's an important thing to point out, and I think as readers, right, because many of us are just readers and we don't think too much about it. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing, is communicating with the classroom teachers and making sure they understand that as well.
Thanks. Kim, this was a sort of ending inspirational slide from you.
Yeah, I really like to think forward. And I'm wondering what it's going to look like when we're done with remote learning, and how we're going to be able to carry some of these practices through, because, you know, we are 21st century learners. I mean, our students are, and I think some of us have been catching up to them. So it'll be super interesting, I think, to see what we can do, and what can come out of this really stressful amount of work that we've been doing. I think we're redefining special education, to be honest with you.
I think it's very exciting. I really do. So thank you for that inspiration. Okay. So I think that I'm not going to go through and mic anyone at the end of this, because it's now 11:22, and I'm finding what's happening is towards the end of the webinars, when they go over, their questions have mostly passed. But I would encourage you to write in the last of your questions so that we can answer them after the fact. All right, so please go ahead while I'm ending to write in all of the questions that you have that didn't get addressed. I'm going to put out to the group, has anyone come up with any miraculous solutions to the large caseloads? Anyone have any thoughts on that, any light bulbs go on? If not, we can think about it some more and try to brainstorm some ideas on the Q&A sheet that we'll upload. Okay. Now, again, we are posting all recorded sessions. The public file that I keep alluding to, you will get an email within the next couple of hours that gives you a link to that public file where you can get your certificate, which I will change to make it 90 minutes. And all of the materials that we talked about, I will also follow up with the presenters today to get any additional materials that we've promised to you. And they will also have a chance to answer some of your questions on the questions sheet. And without too much further ado, before I say goodbye, I want to point out to you that these are some of our upcoming webinars. We have done everything through Friday this week, right? Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week, we have what we're calling community conversations, and they'll be set up We did this already last week, and these are 2 weeks later, sort of hearing people's stories 2 weeks later. I will set up a couple, 1 or 2 teachers on each of those that will present. And then I would love to hear, it'll be more of an open conversation because we'll have more time and I'll probably be able to unmute more people. I do want to say, and it's not listed here, there is a webinar on Tuesday. I think it's at 1:30, and it will be about using Google Meets. And we will have a specialist, an IT specialist, come on and talk about security and setting that up safely. So you are invited to that. All of our webinars are listed on our website. So to the right, there's that picture. You can see demonstrated success. You can Google demonstrated success. And then in the upper right corner, there is workshops and webinars. And there's a drop down in there for virtual New Hampshire. Okay, so you can sign up for our webinars there. And this is a fun thing that we're doing. We did this yesterday and it was fabulous and beautiful. And we're going to be doing this every Wednesday, so you can go to our Facebook page and tune in on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock and for a live stream concert presented by students in New Hampshire schools. So join us for that. And here is the contact information for Anne and Mike and I. I will share with you, once I get the permission from the presenters, their contact information. It will be in that file. And I think that that's it. Certainly write to me if you have any other specific questions. Thank you to all of you, okay? Every one of the 6 of you that took the time to share with your colleagues. This was a volunteer effort, and I think we all appreciate it so much. There's been such a trend of sharing and sort of a united force in the teaching profession. I've been so proud to be an educator the last few weeks in particular. So thank you to all of you. Everyone go forth and have a fabulous day. And you can expect an email from us shortly with all sorts of links and goodies. All right, so take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Anne. Bye.